Well, hi there. Welcome back to the workshop, and thanks for joining me. And tonight on the bench here, I've got a really nice bass guitar. It is a US Fender USA made P bass, and very nice. And it's just in here for some new strings. We're going to be putting these on here. They're Fender. It says Fender Super 7250s and 45 to 105. I think that's like a medium gauge. Somebody can correct me if they know better, but that's what's going on. I've got a few things out here, some feeler gauges and all that kind of stuff. So we're just going to check all the measurements. I piddled with it a little bit. It feels pretty good. I think the string action is a little bit high, especially on the big E string, the low E. And I did a quick measurement with my gauge, and it's kind of, all of them are just a little bit different. So we're gonna square that away. But I'll bring you along. Let me put you on the overhead here and give you a good look at the guitar. Very nice looking P bass. There's headstock, and you can see, well, if I turned it around so it was going the right way, you might be able to read it. Fender Precision Bass, made in the USA. Oh, you can see that. All right, so there's that. Let's see. Could probably go ahead and do some initial measurements. I've done this bunches of times already, but let me just go ahead. We'll take a few initial measurements and all of that. So for first thing we're going to do is check the relief, and to do that I put a capo on the first fret. You can see that there. And then I usually fret around the body joint in this particular guitar, and I'm really hoping we don't have to do a truss rod adjustment here, because that's kind of a pain in the ass right there. Not sure why Fender did that instead of putting the truss rod in the other way so the adjustment could be done up there. But you either have to take the neck off, or you got to pop this cover off here to get to this, and it's kind of a pain. So I'm hoping it's okay. So we'll have to check everything again when I get the new strings on, because I'm not even sure if these are the same strings. But let's, in bass, I typically am not concerned about checking too much of anything in playing position, but with the bass being a little bit heavy, I don't want the weight of it up against the stand to throw things off. So I'm going to fret the body joint here. Try to keep you in the camera here. I'm going to fret the body joint with my thumb there, and I've got a 15 thou feeler gauge, and I'm going to check, let's see, 3, 5, I'm going to check at the 7th fret. That's typically where I check. That actually feels pretty good. So I lucked out on that. I'm not going to have to, doesn't seem like I'm going to have to do a lot of work there. It's going to be really good. So no worries there, but just a pretty guitar. It does need a cleanup. Looks like it's been played hard and put away wet, as the saying goes. And so I'm going to get the strings off, and I'm just going to wipe everything down just to kind of clean it up a little bit. And I always check, this might be a better angle for you to see here, but I always check when I have the strings off. I always check everything up in here, the tuners. I check all the screws on the back. These are the open gear Fender tuners, but I usually check all of this stuff just to make sure that nothing is loose, because that can cause some issues. So I'll check all that while I have the strings off, and just make sure everything here is exactly as it should be. And then the other thing, let's see, what else? Clean up strings, just check all the measurements, and that's about it. This should be pretty easy peasy. I don't see a whole lot. These have, can you see that? These adjustable, individual adjustable saddles. And so there's Allen screws. And you don't want these things doing this. You want them to be level, because it'll throw, the string will want to lean to one side or the other, and it can cause some issues with string spacing. So I'm going to make sure to, you got a couple of them that are leaning just a little bit. They're really not bad though. So we're going to make sure as we lower everything down, we'll keep those straight. And then we're also going to check intonation, and that's adjusted here in the tailpiece. But I'll bring you along for that if we need to adjust the intonation at all. I'll check it, and then if we need to adjust it, I'll bring you along for that. So give me a second. Let me get these strings off of here, and I'll be right back with you. Okay, welcome back. I've got took the old strings off, did a little bit of a cleanup on the bass, and I put 3 of the 4 strings on, and I thought I would just bring you back in on this last tuner because there just seems to be a lot of confusion out there as to how to do this. So I'm going to say I've got the last string here, and these tuners have a hole down in the center, like so. There's a hole there, and you're supposed to put the string down in there. I see a lot of times the string is just through the slot like that, and there's nothing to hold it. So let me show you what I do. Try not to block you, so apologize for that. Let me maybe adjust that camera just a little bit. I'm going to try not to block you and do this. I did check, by the way, all of these nuts on the top were a little bit loose. I could actually loosen all of them with my finger. So I took the I've got a small adjustable. See that? And I tightened all these up, and again, just snug. We're not looking to break anything. So all right, so here's the string, and what I like to do is I take the string and I put it where it's supposed to live. So it's living here, and then I go 1 tuner, 2 tuners, and then I cut the string. So there's that, and so all right, so the string is cut. Now it goes down in the hole, and then it goes down, and this being the thicker string is a little hard to work with, but I try if I can to get it to wrap around. Sometimes I can't do that just because of the thickness of the string, so then I just wind it. It's really not that big a deal to wind it, and you can use a winder with these. It's not that big a deal to just wind it, and I push the string down like that. See how my finger is? So that the windings go up the post, the windings go underneath each other. That's just the string stretching, so no worries with that. And that's all there is to it. That string is in there, and once the initial stretching is done, that string is not going to go anywhere. So let me zoom that back out, and I'm going to switch you back to this view. Got all the strings on here cleaned up a little bit, so it looks a lot better. Now we need to tune and do some measuring and all that kind of stuff. So let me grab, and I use a tuner app on my phone for some of this, because all we need to do is be close. So, and I'm going to go ahead and plug it in so we can hear it. Oh, sorry about that. Should have plugged it in before I turned the amp on, I guess. But we're plugged in. Definitely not tuned. So let's see if we can get that done real quick. Okay, we are roughly tuned, good enough to turn the amp off and unplug this. We're tuned close enough. Probably can't hear that, it's not plugged in, but we're tuned close enough we can do some measurements and all of that. So let's check the neck relief and see how we are on that. So I'm going to put, again, the capo on the first fret. I've got my 15 thou. Let's hold the body joint. Again, I'm holding the body joint here with my thumb, and I'm going to measure at the 7th fret. That feels really good, and you can just barely hear the feeler gauge rubbing the string as you put it in there. So that's perfect in my opinion at 15 thou. Let's I'm going to check the first fret action. I've got 22 thou on a guitar, acoustic guitar. I do 18, but on a bass I think Fender spec is 22 thou. So that actually feels really, really good. It's a little less on this side. It was right on about 22 here. It's a little snug 22 here, and I almost had to force it under here, so it's probably closer to 18 down there. So that's, and it feels good. So that's the thing. Once we go to play it, that's the determining factor. So now we need to check the string height, and I don't really know the best way for you to be able to maybe just leave you on the overhead and do it like this. And I'm going to check at the 12th fret, and what I like to do is have all of the strings follow the radius of the fretboard. So if we're going to shoot, let's say for 5/64, then I want all the strings to be at 5/64. And right now I'm looking at 4, 5. I'm looking at 6 on the low E, almost 6 there. So looks like all of them except maybe, yeah, all of them need to come down just a little bit. They're all hovering around 6. They're all a little bit different. So as you have the radius, I hope this makes sense. So as you have the radius of the fretboard, all of the strings ideally would be equal height off the fretboard. And in this case, we've got this string is a little higher than this string, and then so this one is higher, lower, low. This one is roughly in the ballpark, and then this one's lower. So they're not the same. So I've got a small Allen wrench here that fits in these saddles. These are individually adjusted saddles here. So I'm going to take a few minutes and just get the string height where it needs to be. And then what I think I'm going to do, I think I'm going to do that. Well, let me do one for you. It's just so you can see. I'll scoot the bass down a little bit, maybe zoom that, readjust here so you can kind of see what I'm doing maybe. That glare might be a killer for you. But we need to bring this guy down. And so you want these guys to be flat with the top of the guitar. You don't want them, doing this kind of thing. So I'm going to lower this, and I'm going to go a turn and I'm going to lower these together. So a turn and a turn, and it's, you know, lefty loosey, righty tighty, lefty loosey, you know, that kind of thing. So I'm going to bring the E, needed to come down actually more than the others, so I'm going to do that, and then remeasure, retune. That's kind of the drill. So guitar comes up this way, so I can missed it by a hair, maybe just a tad. Man, that was a pretty good guess on my part. So let's go just a tad more. Again, I'm not much. This one's almost bottomed out. I got a little adjustability here, but all right. So that one, that got the E string pretty much where it needs to be. Kind of saw how that goes, and it just takes a little time to adjust them. And I'm going to get all of these, so at the 12th fret here, we've got a nice consistent 5/64 going across, and then everything will follow the fretboard. So let me do that, and then I'll bring you back and we'll check pickup height and intonation, and this guy will be, this guy will be done. So I'll be right back with you. Okay, welcome back. Got all of the string height. The bass is going to play really well. The string height is really locked in. I did 5/64s at the 12th fret all the way across, and it feels really, really good. I've done some initial checking, and let me just show you how I do that real quick. And I've done some initial checking of the intonation, and so let me just show you that little bit. So basically, intonation, you want, if you're playing the bass, you know, and you're playing an A, and then, or an E, and then you're going to play an A, or a B, or a C, whatever, up, down through here, another E. You really need that to be the same up, down, up and down through here, not flat or sharp or anything like that. That can be problematic. So let me just show you how I check. What I do is, and you can do it a couple of different ways. You can play the open string, so this would be the open G. And I'm looking at tuner. I've got my, show you this. I've got this app. Can you see that? And so that's what I'm using to tune. So you can play the open string and then fret the 12th, and they should be the same if the guitar is intonated correctly. Now, the advantage with this type of guitar, an electric bass, electric guitars have the ability to adjust the intonation. With an acoustic guitar, it gets to be a little more complicated to deal with that. But let me, and I had this Allen wrench in there just because it's the right size to adjust these screws back here. These are Allen screws, so that's why I had the Allen wrench in there, just in case we need it. So the other thing you can do is check the harmonic. So if you do a harmonic at the 12th fret, that should also give you a G, which on my tuner it does, and then I fret, and I've got a G, and with that string is perfectly intonated. Now you play and you bend strings and stuff like that, so intonation is, you know, it's never going to be perfect because, you know, depending on who the person playing it, but as doing a setup on a guitar, you just want it as close as possible. So I like to do the harmonic. So I'll do harmonic there, which is D, and then test it there. And I got some stuff vibrating on top of the amp there. I apologize for that. So we are, first two are perfect, spot on. A string, perfect, no problem there. Now let's check the E. Harmonic is in tune, fretted at the 12th fret. Perfect. So we don't need to adjust anything on the intonation. Let me just explain to you, at least in my mind, how intonation works. If a string is sharp, then the way that I think about it, sharp equals short. So the string is too short. You need to lengthen it, which means the saddle needs to be moved toward the back of the guitar. So if the string was sharp, then you would loosen the screw to move, or I'm sorry, scratch other way around. If the string was sharp, you would tighten the screw, which would pull the saddle toward the rear of the guitar. Okay, I think I got it right that time. If it's flat, then you would do the opposite. You would loosen the screw, which would push the saddle toward the neck to fix the intonation that way. And then you just got to retune and check and retune and check. So it can be a little fiddly, fidgety, whatever you want to call it. But we're good there. Let's check. And I'm just trying to wipe up my fingerprints as I go here, since I've already cleaned the guitar once, just to keep it clean. So let's check pickup height, and I'll show you how I do that. I've got these two brass rods, and I just ordered these off of Amazon. One of them is an 1/8 inch, so this is an 1/8 inch brass rod. And then I've got another one that's skinnier. It's 3/32. And so that is Fender recommended pickup height. So that's typically what I set. Again, that's one of those things that's personal to the person who's playing the instrument. But I usually do spec, and then if somebody wants an adjustment from there, then that's what I do. So here's, I fret the very last fret, and then we should have an 1/8 inch clearance between the string and I'm on the I'm on the low side, so the higher, the 1/8 for the higher side, and then the 3/32 for the skinnier strings. Basically use less clearance. Does that make sense? Okay, so here we go. We're just going to check this. That actually feels not too bad there on this string. Let's check. That's not bad. And these other two strings I'm going to use. Now the P, see if I can show you, put you on the overhead, maybe that might be better. The P bass has two pickups, and so what I'm doing is just using the 1/8 and the 3/32, and I'm kind of splitting the difference in the middle here. So I want an 1/8 here, a little less than an 1/8 here, and then a little more than the 3/32 here, and then 3/32. I hope that makes sense. So 3/32. So that side, that actually could come up a little bit. Just a little bit. It wasn't bad at all. Yeah, that's better. And then this guy. Is just a tad more than the 3/32. So that's exactly what I ended up with. So 3/32 here, a little more than 3/32 here, a little less than an 1/8, if that makes sense, a little less than an 1/8 here, and then an 1/8 here. So anyway, I hope all that makes sense to you. And so again, these rods are 1/8 and 3/32, and that's what I use. If you had one pickup, then it's easy. You just do the two, you know, the low, high, and the low string, and then you're all set. But the P bass a little different because it's got the multiple pickups. So let's see if we can. What I'm plugged into is not really a bass amp. It's a guitar amp, and it's a bench guitar amp. It's a decent amp, a Black Star amp. So it's a good practice type amp. It's just not a bass amp, but maybe I can piddle with this a little bit and let you hear how the bass sounds. Try not to overpower things here. And I'm just going to set the tone about halfway, and we'll just see how it goes. Yeah, oh man, it plays nice. This really does play nice, so. Sounds good to me. It feels really nice. Again, there's no, I checked like for sharp fret ends. I checked all that stuff around the edge of the nut. Sometimes there's some sharpness there and all. I checked all that stuff out, kind of gave it a once over. It was just here for strings and a setup, but you might as well take just a couple extra minutes and make sure you're not dealing with any other issues, like tightening these guys up took 5 seconds, and I always check that when I change strings. So I recommend that you do that as well. And I'm going to let you go on this. I think this bass is ready to go and get back into service. And the guy that plays it's got a show. This is Tuesday night, and he's got a show Friday night. And so I'm going to get this back to him so he can be ready to go. But very nice bass. Very, very nice bass. Again, it's a Fender USA, made in the USA Fender P bass, and very nice looking, very nice sounding bass. So I'm going to throw it back in the case and get it back to the owner, and so everything's ready to go for Friday night. And again, if you haven't done so, please hit that subscribe button, and then there's a bell right there that will notify you when a new video is uploaded. And the channel's been growing slowly, but growing a little bit, and I'm glad for that. So thank you to all of those who've subscribed, and invite other people to come over and subscribe to the channel and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, thanks for being in the workshop tonight, and I'll see you next time.